After my father-in-law's memorial, my ex-wife inherited $415 and kicked me out. She called me in tears the next day. It wasn't the money, not really. That came later in waves in the silence that follows a detonation. But the moment itself, the fracture, happened quietly. No thunderclap, no screaming, no dramatic betrayal, just the soft, final sound of something closing, like a door or a heart. It was the night after her father's memorial. Thomas was gone. He'd been sick for months, maybe longer, pancreatic cancer. A death sentence whispered in a sterile room with beige walls and fluorescent lights that flickered like they knew a secret. Anne never cried in front of me, not once, not even after we found out. I think I cried enough for both of us. I'd spent weeks watching her drift in and out of rooms like a woman underwater. She'd sit in the armchair by the window with her phone clutched in one hand like she was waiting for some news, even after we knew there wouldn't be any. Just the slow unraveling. The appointments, the morphine, the whispered updates, the calls from hospice. And then the inevitable. The memorial was held in a chapel that smelled like old wood and fresh lilies, the kind of clean, formal space where grief gets dressed up in black suits and polite condolences. I remember Anne's posture during the service, how she sat with her spine too straight, hands folded too tightly in her lap. Her jaw didn't unclench once. I watched the back of her neck, the way a small tendon flexed every time the pastor said her father's name. She didn't speak, not at the pulpit, not to the family, not even to me. She just nodded when people offered sympathy, accepted hugs like they were handshakes. I hovered a few feet behind her, somewhere between present and invisible. We weren't together anymore, not technically, but we still shared a home, a bed sometimes when one of us couldn't sleep and the other didn't have the strength to say no. We had been untangling slowly like thread. I thought there was still something between us. A remnant, a root. I was wrong. It happened in the kitchen. After the guests left, after the catering trays were stacked and the wine bottles emptied, after her brother passed out face down on the living room couch. The house smelled like lilies and whiskey and too many stories told with wet eyes. I was rinsing glasses in the sink. Anne was sitting at the island, still in her black dress, barefoot, her hair unpinned and falling in soft waves over her shoulder. She looked exhausted. Beautiful but distant, like a photograph from someone else's life. She poured herself a glass of wine, a good Bordeaux her father used to love. I remember the sound of it, that gentle glug-glug against glass. I turned around to say something, I don't even know what, but her face stopped me. She was already looking at me, not with anger, not with love, with decision, like she'd made up her mind and was waiting for the words to catch up. "You need to leave," she said. I thought she meant the kitchen, or the room, or maybe that she wanted to be alone tonight. I waited for the rest of the sentence. But she didn't say anything else. "Anne?" I asked, like her name was a rope I could throw into the space between us. She took a sip of wine, no flinch, no hesitation. "You need to move out," she said, "tonight." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, but her voice didn't waver. "What are you talking about?" "I can't do this anymore," she said. I didn't move. My hands were still wet from the sink. I wiped them on a dish towel and tried to ground myself in something, the smell of the wine, the ticking of the clock on the wall, the clink of a bottle cap someone had left on the counter. "And your father just..." "This has nothing to do with my dad," she cut in. "This is about us, about you, about me needing to be done." My throat closed. I felt the heat rise, like shame or panic or both. "You want me out now, tonight?" "Yes." "Where am I supposed to go?" She shrugged. "I don't know, Caleb. A motel, I don't care." That last part landed like a slap. I don't care. I looked toward the hallway. 2 bags were already packed and sitting by the door. One of them was mine, my old leather duffel. I hadn't used it in months. It looked unfamiliar, like it belonged to someone who used to travel, who used to believe in new beginnings. "You packed for me," I said quietly. She didn't answer. I stepped closer, not too close, just enough to see her face more clearly. There were no tears, not even redness in her eyes, just steel. "Did I do something?" I asked. "Is this about the memorial?" I tried to help. No, she said, it's not about today, it's about everything. Everything. That word echoed. Everything meant the last 3 years, the fights, the silences, the miscarriage, the way we drifted apart like boats with cut ropes, the way I pulled away, the way she stopped reaching for me, all of it. She looked at me then, for real, her eyes flicked up from her wineglass and landed on me like a verdict. I don't want you here when I wake up tomorrow. I could have said something cruel. I could have told her she was selfish, cold, that she didn't even let herself grieve, that she was trying to buy a new life with her inheritance and leave the old one in a ditch. But the words wouldn't come. I was too full of static. So I nodded once slowly. And I picked up the bags. The weight of them was insulting, as if they contained everything I was worth now. A few clothes, a toothbrush, my copy of The Unbearable Lightness of Being with the cover half torn. I hadn't even realized she still had it. As I opened the door, she said, I didn't mean to hurt you. But it wasn't an apology. I stepped into the cold, moonlit street. The air smelled like wet earth and old leaves, spring trying to break through winter. I stood there with my bags at my feet, no car, no destination, and no idea who to call. The world looked the same, but nothing felt familiar anymore. The streetlight buzzed. A car passed in the distance. Somewhere a dog barked. Life was still happening. It just wasn't happening to me. Behind me, the door shut. Not slammed. Just shut. Soft final. The first night I didn't sleep. I sat on Caleb's couch, surrounded by the buzz of his refrigerator and the scratching sounds his cat made under the radiator. My bag sat at my feet, unopened. Like maybe this wasn't real, like maybe I was just visiting. I kept checking my phone, watching the battery drain down like blood from a cut. Nothing from Anne. Caleb didn't ask much. That's the thing about old friends. The good ones know when not to pry. He offered me a beer, handed me a blanket with a hole in it, and said, stay as long as you need. But I heard the for now in his voice, that unspoken limit, the ceiling on charity. The next morning, I watched the sunrise through his dust-streaked window and felt like I was watching someone else's life start. The city hummed to life below, indifferent and fast. I made coffee, stood barefoot in his kitchen, and looked at the mug in my hand like it might tell me what to do next. I couldn't taste it. Everything just felt gray, like I was underwater with my eyes open. That was the beginning of the floating, the disconnection. I walked around the next few days like my skin didn't fit right. I was technically alive, heart beating, lungs working, legs moving, but I felt like I'd stepped outside myself. Like I was watching a man who looked like me pretend to function. I wandered the streets a lot. Brooklyn in spring is brutal in its beauty. Blossoms cracking through branches, sun filtering through scaffolding. Lovers walking with coffees, strollers, dogs, everyone moving forward like there was some destination they all agreed on. I hated them for it, and I envied them more. I ate less, not on purpose, just forgot or didn't care. I'd start chewing and realize I didn't know how to finish. Even flavors seemed foreign. Bagels, eggs, pizza, all flat in my mouth like cardboard. I survived on black coffee and cheap beer, sometimes ramen, mostly air. I texted Anne once, day 4, just did I forget my watch? She didn't reply. I didn't forget the watch, I just needed to say something that didn't sound like I'm unraveling without you. By day 7, I had an email drafted for every job I could remember being remotely qualified for. Editor, copywriter, assistant, barista, nothing sent. I couldn't push send. It was like that button weighed 100 pounds. Every version of the future felt fake, like a stage set with cardboard walls and props made of lies. I couldn't see myself inside any of it. On day 9, I went to the pier, just sat on a bench and watched the East River churn like it was trying to shake something off. I thought about the sketchbook I left behind, the half-finished portraits, the drawings I'd made of Anne when she was asleep or reading or brushing her hair. I wondered if she'd found them, if she looked at them, if she burned them. That night, I dreamed I was in our old apartment, the one from before the house, before we tried to make marriage work with mortgage payments and oven repairs and dinner parties we both hated. In the dream, Anne was sitting at the kitchen table, looking through photos, laughing. She looked at me and said, "Why'd you leave?" And I couldn't answer because I didn't remember ever walking out. I woke up gasping, my heart in my throat like I'd been underwater again. Day 10, she called. I was folding Caleb's laundry badly, I'll admit, when the phone rang. Her name lit up my screen like an alarm. "And don't answer." I stared at it for 3 full rings before swiping. She didn't speak right away. Then, in a voice that didn't sound like hers, she said, "I didn't think it would feel like this." I sat down on the floor. "Like what?" I asked. "Empty," she whispered, cold, loud. "The house feels too big and too small at the same time." I heard her breathing, tight, shaky, crying but trying not to sound like it. I thought it would feel clean, like wiping the slate, like I'd finally have space to breathe, but it's like the air got thinner. I waited. Part of me wanted to hang up. Another part wanted to tell her to come pick me up right now, but most of me just sat there, stunned. She said, "I miss you." 3 words, soft, sharp, devastating. I closed my eyes, let them pierce. "I miss you too," I said without thinking. Then I added, "But that doesn't change what happened." Silence. I could hear a faucet drip in her background, could picture the kitchen, the island, her in that same chair, probably with a glass in front of her again. "I was angry," she said finally, "and scared. When the will was read, I saw what he left me and I panicked. I thought I was finally free, and then I felt trapped all over again, like the money was a mirror." "A mirror of what?" I asked. "Of everything I thought I'd escaped. You, the version of me that stayed too long, that tried too hard, that failed." I felt something twist in me. "I don't hate you," she added, "but I don't know how to love you anymore either." I swallowed hard. "That's the most honest thing you've ever said," I told her. We sat in the quiet for a while, just the sound of each other breathing, both of us trying not to cry. Then she whispered, "Are you okay?" And I lied. "Yeah." She didn't push. "I'm sorry," she said. And I said, "Me too." We didn't hang up, the line just stayed open, empty, like an open wound that neither of us could look at directly. Eventually, she said she needed to go. I said okay, and that was it. I didn't sleep again that night. But something shifted. Not healed, not fixed. Just shifted. And somehow that felt like a beginning. I don't know what I expected the confrontation to be. Some cinematic moment maybe, raised voices, full-throated grief, accusations thrown like plates. But that's not how it happens when you really know someone. Not after years of brushing your teeth beside them. Not after the miscarriage. Not after your body remembers the shape of theirs without needing to think. The real confrontation is quiet, tired. It comes in like a tide, slow, relentless, and too deep to see the bottom of. It was a Thursday, 2 weeks after the call. I just finished a job interview that felt more like performance art than employment screening. Some sleek tech startup, open floor plan, exposed brick, all the usual bullshit. A 27-year-old hearing manager with a buzz cut and a lanyard asked me how I dealt with failure. I almost laughed, not the polite kind either, the kind that comes from somewhere just past humiliation. I walked out mid-sentence. I ended up in front of the house without planning to be there. It was muscle memory. I told myself I wouldn't go back. I deleted her contact, removed the photos from my favorites, started referring to the house as hers, not ours, in my head. But there I was, standing in front of the door with my hand hovering over the fake rock, the one we joked about being the world's worst hiding spot. I pressed the key into the lock. The house was quieter than I remembered, too clean, like it had been staged by someone afraid of making a single human mistake. The rug was new, so was the couch. The blanket we used to fight over and always ran cold, I always ran hot, was gone. The art on the wall was different too, less emotional, more curated. A big abstract piece where our framed photos used to hang. I felt like I was in a catalog titled Healing Through Expensive Taste. I walked toward the bedroom and something stopped me. I don't know if it was guilt or instinct or just the sense that I didn't belong here anymore. So I turned left instead, toward the office. The closet still had some of my things. I kept a box there, old sketchbooks, some journals, a couple of small canvases I never finished. The kind of artifacts you leave behind when you still think you'll come back for them someday. I sat on the floor and opened the sketchbook. There she was, page after page, Anne asleep, Anne brushing her teeth, Anne crying in the passenger seat of the car after the ultrasound, Anne with her face half lit by the glow of the refrigerator at midnight. She was everywhere. I'd drawn her like I was trying to memorize her in case she disappeared. Maybe I'd always known I would lose her. Maybe I was just trying to hold on in the only way I could. The last page was unfinished, her outline in bed facing away from me. I'd stopped before adding the detail, her back, her shoulder, the way her hair always curled around the base of her neck. I stared at that sketch until my eyes burned. And then I heard her voice. "You still draw me like I'm someone you know." I didn't turn around right away. "I didn't know you were here," she said, softer now. "I didn't know I was coming until I was already outside." She stood in the doorway, barefoot, in jeans and an old sweater of mine I didn't even know she still had. Her hair was wet, showered recently, no makeup, still devastating. I finally looked at her. "You replaced everything," I said. She glanced around. "Yeah, I tried." "Did it work?" She shrugged. "It's quieter, less haunted, but also lonelier." We just stood there. "I don't know what you want from me," she said after a while. "You left." "No," I said more sharply than I meant to. "You told me to leave. You packed my bags." "I had to," she said. "I couldn't breathe anymore with you here. You didn't even let me say goodbye to the version of us that worked." "Because I didn't want to remember that version," she said. "I wanted to kill it before it made me stay again." That hit me in the stomach. I felt winded. "I know I wasn't good at being your husband," I said finally. "I was scared most of the time, of everything, of losing the baby, of losing you, of becoming someone who couldn't give you what you wanted." Her face twitched like she wanted to speak but didn't know where to begin. "And when I lost you anyway," I said, "it felt like the failure had already happened. So what was the point of trying to undo it?" We both sat down, legs crossed on opposite ends of the room, surrounded by our past in boxes and books and old carpet stains. "I still don't know if I forgive you," she said, "for disappearing, even when you were still here. I don't know if I forgive myself either." That was the truth of it. The miscarriage hollowed something in us. We talked about it in whispers like it was a secret we were ashamed of, like the grief only counted if someone else acknowledged it. But nobody really did, not our friends, not her family, not even us. We just folded it up and stored it between our silence and our overcooked dinners and our Netflix binges. "I thought the money would make me feel safe," she said, "but it just made me feel more alone." "I know. I didn't think I'd miss you. Do you?" She didn't answer right away. Then, "I miss the version of you I thought would always stay." I felt that deeply. And I miss the version of you who trusted I would. We didn't cry, not then. We were both too dry, too brittle for that. But we stayed there a long time, not talking, not touching, just breathing in the weight of everything unsaid. When I stood to leave, she didn't ask me to stay. But she didn't look away either. I left the sketchbook on the counter, a note tucked inside. "This was us, I'm letting it go." I walked out without looking back. This time the door clicked softly behind me, not shut out. Just closed. There was no sunrise epiphany, no dramatic haircut, no impulsive flight to a different city where I found myself in the arms of a stranger or at the edge of a cliff. I just started walking one day, left Caleb's apartment with a backpack and the last of my rolled-up sketches, and wandered into the city like it might know where I belonged better than I did. I ended up renting a room above a bookstore in Clinton Hill. Narrow staircase, creaky floorboards, one small window that faced the alley, but it smelled like paper and wood glue, and the old man who owned it let me stay cheap in exchange for a few shifts managing the register. The room was barely large enough for a bed and a desk, but it was mine. Nobody else's ghost lingered there. I bought a second-hand lamp from a sidewalk sale, a space heater from Craigslist. I started cooking for myself again, eggs that were too runny, toast burned on one side. Still, I ate every bite. I cleaned the dishes with intention. I folded my socks. I started answering emails, then writing them. I sent out job applications like casting paper boats into the ocean. Most sank. One floated, a part-time teaching job at a nonprofit for arts education. Inner city kids, small classroom, half the supplies missing. Perfect. They asked me why I wanted the job during the interview. I said, because I need to show someone that it's okay to make a mess and call it art. I didn't mean to say something poetic, but it landed. The director nodded like she understood heartbreak intimately. The first time I walked into that classroom, I was terrified. These kids had seen more than I ever would. Grief was something they wore on their sleeves, but they drew anyway. Scribbles, sketches, sometimes just angry colors layered until the paper tore. It didn't matter. They showed up. I showed up, and something like trust began to form. One kid, Elijah, 10 years old, brilliant, mean as hell, told me I looked like a sad detective. I laughed for the first time in weeks, like a real laugh from the gut. Then I asked him to draw what a sad detective looks like. He did. It was me, holding a giant magnifying glass over a broken heart. He grinned when I pinned it to the wall. On Thursdays, I started noticing a woman in the bookstore. Always came in around noon, black coffee, newspaper, quiet. She read cover to cover, then left without buying anything. We spoke once, just a comment about the weather, then about the article she was reading. Her voice was calm, certain, like she was used to listening more than speaking. One day, she asked what I was drawing in my sketchbook. I showed her a quick study, a chair, a window, the play of shadows on a stack of books. She said, "It's honest, that's rare." Then she left. She comes back every week. I haven't asked her name yet. Sometimes I walk by the house, not on purpose. I'll be on my way to get groceries or heading back from the school, and there it is, still standing, still beautiful. I imagine Anne inside, barefoot in the kitchen, drinking wine or rearranging furniture. I don't hate her. I think part of me still loves her, but it's quieter now. Less about needing her and more about being grateful that we once shared something real, something flawed and beating. I dream of her less now. When I do, it's not the crying kind of dream, more like cameos. She's on a bus, I'm on the sidewalk. We smile, the scene shifts. Last week I got a letter in the mail, no return address. Inside was a single photo, the sketchbook I'd left behind, open to that unfinished page. Anne had completed it. My pencil lines, her ink, my outline, her details, her hair curling just right around her neck. No note, no signature, just that. Closure maybe. Or maybe just art. I framed it. It sits above my desk now, not like a shrine, but a reminder of what we made, of what I lost, of what I'm still learning to build. I keep sketching, I keep teaching. I buy fruit now, not because I like it, but because it feels like something a person who's choosing life would do. I listen to records, badly tuned jazz, voices cracked with time. I open the window at night. The alley is loud, bottles, laughter, stray cats, but it's mine. The quiet isn't empty anymore. It's full of the small, stubborn sounds of starting over. And I've stopped waiting for the echo.